I came home early that Tuesday evening with a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and a reservation confirmation on my phone in the other. 18 years. My wife and I had been married for 18 years and I still made a point of celebrating every single one. I parked in the driveway, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment just feeling quietly proud of myself. Dinner at Carmine's, her favorite table by the window, 7 o'clock. I had even called ahead to make sure they had the tiramisu she loved. I should mention a few things so you understand the full weight of what happened next. My name is Marcus. I'm 51 years old. I spent 22 years as a structural engineer before moving into project management, and I've built my career, my home, and my marriage on one principle: do the work quietly and let the results speak. My wife Diana was 47. We met at a mutual friend's cookout in Charlotte, got married 2 years later, bought the house in Raleigh, and built something I thought was real. Her younger brother, Ryan, had been part of our lives for all of it. Groomsman at the wedding. Over for holidays, borrowed money twice and paid it back both times. I trusted him the way you trust family. I grabbed the sunflowers off the passenger seat, locked the car, and walked toward the front door. That's when I heard her voice through the open kitchen window. Diana was on the phone, laughing in that low, easy way she only did when she was completely relaxed. I slowed down without meaning to. He made a reservation somewhere, she was saying. He texted me about it this morning. 7 o'clock. Can you believe that? Like I'm supposed to just sit across a table from him and pretend. I stopped walking. There was a pause. She laughed again. Ryan, stop. You know I can't just tell him. Not tonight. Another pause. Yes, I already told Derek. He's meeting me at the Marriott on Glenwood at 8. I just need you to call Marcus around 7:30. Tell him something came up with Mom. Ask him to come by your place. By the time he figures out I'm not there, I'll already be. She laughed again. I know. You're the best, honestly. He never suspects you. I stood on the front porch with sunflowers in my hand and my reservation on my phone, and 18 years stacked up behind me like a wall I had just walked straight into. I didn't go inside. I turned around, walked back to my car, set the sunflowers on the passenger seat, and sat there for a long time with the engine off. The street was quiet. A neighbor's sprinkler was running somewhere. I watched it arc back and forth over the same patch of grass, over and over, going nowhere. Here is what I did not do. I did not go inside and confront her. I did not call Ryan. I did not drive to the Marriott on Glenwood. I had learned a long time ago that the worst decisions I ever made were the ones I made while the anger was still hot. So I sat in my car and I breathed, and I thought. I called my attorney, a man named Gerald, who had handled our home purchase and a business contract dispute a few years back. I got his voicemail, left a message that said I needed to speak with him first thing in the morning about a personal matter, and kept it at that. Then I drove to my friend Theo's house across town. Theo had known me since we were both 26 and working the same construction site outside of Durham. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and stepped aside without saying a word. I sat at his kitchen table and told him everything. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon and listened. Ryan, he said when I was done. Just the name, nothing else. Ryan, I confirmed. How long do you think it's been going on? I had been asking myself the same question on the drive over. Diana had seemed distant for the better part of 6 months, but I had chalked it up to stress at her job. She worked in hospital administration, and there had been a leadership restructuring that left her managing twice the workload. I had given her space. I had been patient. I had thought I was being a good husband. I don't know, I said, but I'm going to find out everything I need to know before I make a single move. Theo nodded slowly. What do you need from me? A place to stay tonight, I said, and maybe a few nights after that. I went back to the house at 6 the next morning, when I knew Diana would still be asleep. I needed documents. I went through our home office methodically and quietly. Tax returns from the last 3 years, the mortgage paperwork, both car titles, my pension statements, the investment account information. I took photographs of everything I didn't want to carry out. I also noticed, on the shared laptop we kept on the desk, that she had been logged into a banking app I didn't recognize. I wrote down the institution name. I was out of the house in 40 minutes. Gerald called me back at 8:15. I was in the parking lot of a coffee shop on the north side, and I talked to him for almost an hour. He was careful and thorough, the way good attorneys always are. He asked me questions I hadn't thought to ask myself. He told me what I could and could not do in North Carolina. He told me what documentation I would need. He told me to stop depositing my paycheck into our joint account immediately and to open a personal account that afternoon, which I did. He also told me something that clarified a great deal. Diana and I had a joint investment account that she had the authority to withdraw from without my signature. Gerald advised me to request a full transaction history that same day. I called the brokerage that afternoon. In the last 8 months, $43,000 had been moved out in increments, never more than $4,000 at a time, spread across transfers on different days of the week. Methodical. Careful. Like someone had thought about how to do it without triggering alerts. I sat with that number for a long time. I want to be precise here, because this matters. I was not a perfect husband. I worked long hours. I sometimes came home too tired to be the person she needed. I could have been more present. I own that, but I had been faithful. I had been financially responsible. I had shown up for 18 years, and I had just found out that while I was booking anniversary dinners and buying sunflowers, my wife had been systematically draining our savings and recruiting my brother-in-law to cover for her. The anger, when it finally arrived, was not hot. It was cold. Very, very cold. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved carefully. Gerald filed the initial paperwork. I opened my own accounts and redirected my direct deposit. I consulted with a financial advisor about the investment account and took the steps available to me to document the unauthorized withdrawals as part of the divorce proceedings. Gerald believed we had a strong case for dissipation of marital assets. I said nothing to Diana. I came home at normal hours, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. She seemed almost relieved by my quietness, which told me something. She had been bracing for a confrontation that never came. Ryan called me once during this period, casual as ever, asking if I wanted to come watch a game at his place that Saturday. I said sure, maybe. I'd let him know. I never called back. Then came the morning Diana found out. Gerald's office had sent the service of process to the house as required. I had timed it deliberately for a Thursday morning, when I knew Diana had a late start. I was already at the office when she called. She called 4 times in a row. I let it go to voicemail each time. The 5th time, I picked up. Marcus. Her voice was shaking. What is this? What did you do? I think it's fairly clear, I said. You can't just... We need to talk about this. You can't just file without even talking to me. Diana, I said, I heard you on the phone. On our anniversary, I was standing on the front porch with flowers. The silence that followed was very long. How much did you hear? She finally asked. Enough to know about Ryan. Enough to know about Derek. Enough to know about the Marriott on Glenwood. I paused. And my attorney knows about the $43,000. The line went quiet again. When she spoke, her voice had changed completely. Something harder had come into it. You've been planning this for weeks, she said. Yes. While I was right here, while we were eating dinner together. Yes. That's cold, Marcus. That's really cold. I found that genuinely remarkable. Diana, I said, you were planning to leave me alone at a restaurant on our anniversary so you could sleep with someone at a hotel while your brother ran interference. And you want to talk to me about cold. She hung up. She called back 11 minutes later and asked if we could meet to talk in person. I told her that any communication needed to go through our attorneys from that point forward. She called 3 more times that day. I did not answer. The next few weeks were hard in the way that grief is hard. Not loud, not dramatic, just a steady weight. I had lived in that house for 14 years. I had painted every room at least once. I knew which floorboards creaked and which drawer in the kitchen stuck in the summer humidity. Leaving it was not simple, even knowing what I knew. What I had not anticipated was Ryan. He called me on a Sunday afternoon, about 10 days after Diana received the divorce filing. I almost didn't pick up. Something made me answer anyway. Marcus. He sounded genuinely shaken, which surprised me. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I know you heard. Diana told me. He exhaled. I need you to know that I never wanted it to go this way. You're family to me. Ryan, I said, you helped your sister deceive me. You were going to call me that night with a fake story about your mother so she could be at a hotel with another man. I know what I did. His voice broke slightly. I've been trying to figure out I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I just didn't want to lose her as a sister. You didn't have to lose anyone, I said. You made a choice. You picked a side. I understand that, but don't call me about it. I ended the call. What happened at Ryan's house 2 weeks later, I heard about through his wife, Carla. Apparently, their parents, who had known nothing, found out the full story when Diana called their mother in tears expecting sympathy. Their mother told their father. Their father drove to Ryan's house on a Saturday morning. I was told the conversation could be heard from the driveway. Carla called me that evening. She apologized, which she didn't have to do. She sounded exhausted. I told her none of it was her fault because it wasn't. The divorce took 7 months. Gerald was excellent. The $43,000 became a significant factor in the asset division. Diana had retained her own attorney, a competent woman named Patricia, who negotiated firmly but professionally. In the end, the settlement reflected the documented withdrawals. I kept the equity in the house. Diana kept her car and a portion of the retirement accounts. It was not everything I had lost, but it was fair by any legal measure. I moved into a rental apartment on the east side while the house was being listed. It was a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor with big windows and a small balcony where I could have coffee in the morning. It was smaller than anything I had lived in since my late 20s, and I found, unexpectedly, that I liked it. No history in the walls. No floorboards that reminded me of anything. Theo and I watched football on the couch. I started cooking again, something I had mostly stopped doing in the last few years of the marriage. I called my sister in Greensboro more often. I slept better than I had in months. I ran into Ryan once, about a year after everything was finalized. It was at a hardware store of all places. We were both standing in the paint aisle. He saw me before I saw him, and he looked like a man who wanted very badly to disappear into the wall behind him. I nodded once. He nodded back. We went our separate ways down the aisle. Some things you say, some things you just carry for a while and then set down when you're ready. What I want to say to anyone who might be in the place I was standing on that front porch, holding flowers, hearing words that rearrange the entire shape of your life, is this: the anger is not wrong, the grief is not wrong, but none of the decisions that actually helped me were made while I was in the middle of either one. I went to my car, I called my attorney, I moved quietly and precisely, and I protected myself the way I should have. 18 years is not nothing, but a life built on something real is worth more than a marriage maintained on performance. I know that now in a way I couldn't have known it before. The sunflowers, by the way. I left on the front seat of my car for 3 days before I threw them out. Every time I got in to drive somewhere, they were just sitting there. A little more wilted each time. I thought about moving them or tossing them right away, but somehow I kept leaving them. Maybe I needed to watch the whole thing finish before I could let it go. Eventually I did. I threw them out at a gas station on a Wednesday afternoon, on my way to meet Gerald for what turned out to be our last appointment. I pulled out of the station, merged onto the highway, and drove toward whatever came next.